What's going to happen to the 4 criminal cases against Donald Trump, 2 state and 2 federal? On the other side of Tuesday, you're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. Take a minute. Early voting has started. Hit the subscription button and help us continue to build this channel. And I'm Michael Popok at The Intersection. I'm going to update you on the 4 cases and then tell you with reasonable certainty, at least from my own perspective, what I think is going to happen. Here we go. First of all, let's start with the New York criminal conviction of Donald Trump. Of the 4, he's got 34-count felony conviction in New York and New York State. And that case is going to sentencing on the 26th of November, just after Election Day, just before Thanksgiving. And Donald Trump has to by law and by court order, show up in Judge Merchan's chambers and courtroom for that sentencing. Now we know, depending upon, let's do it 2 ways. If Donald Trump loses on Tuesday, which by all accounts looks exceedingly likely, he will just be a two-time failed loser trying to run for office. Of course, the prosecutors and the justice system has to send the message that you can't manipulate the system just deciding to run and then put all of your cases and prosecutions and convictions and sentencing on hold. So now he'll appear before Judge Merchan's office, a failed candidate, 34 felony counts against him. And with the backdrop that in the survey of similar cases, although I don't think there's any exactly similar comparator of a case, at least 1/3 of New York defendants who are convicted on at least 1 count of business record fraud, the way Donald Trump was in the Stormy Daniels hush money cover-up case, got jail time, 1/3. And they didn't have 34 felony convictions, nor the interference with the election issue. That's also part of the crimes that Donald Trump helped get elected by committing these crimes. Nor did they have at least a half a dozen contemptuous acts by the defendant that have yet to be sanctioned, but they can be baked into the sentencing. Those are all the terrible things that Donald Trump did when he acted out and violated gag orders, attacked Judge Merchan or Judge Merchan's daughter or the prosecutor or the investigators and all of that. All of those acting out, lashing out, which he says is core political speech and campaign speech, that can be used against him in the sentencing. So it's 1/3 is the floor as I'm concerned, because 34 felony counts, the contempt, the attacks on the court system, and now failing in the election interference. I think that ups the chances. I've said I think he's going to get between 1 year and 18 months in jail, assuming he loses on Tuesday. If he wins on Tuesday, I think he gets sentenced, but the sentence will be stayed or suspended, to allow him time for an appeal. In either event, I think it will be stayed. He will not be remanded into custody and taken away to Rikers Island on the day of the 26th. I think the judge will give him time to appeal. If he appeals and wins, then of course he never goes away. If he appeals and loses, if he appeals and loses, of course he will go away. So if he wins on Tuesday, I think the judge is going to have to also stay the sentence until after he's out of the White House. And then when he comes out at 80 years old or 81 years old, he can start serving his sentence. I think it'll be something like that. But for those around the world who follow us, because it's a state conviction, there's no ability for Donald Trump to self-pardon or to obtain any kind of pardon from anyone other than the governor. And the governor in New York is usually Democrat. So that's what's going to happen right after Tuesday and before Thanksgiving with Donald Trump's appearance in New York. Let's move on to Georgia, another state court case. That's Fani Willis, the district attorney in Atlanta, Fulton County, and her prosecution. You may not have heard about that case in a while because it's been up on appeal and stayed. It's pending in front of Judge McAfee in Fulton County, but it's really up on appeal at the first level of appeal in Georgia. 2 issues up on appeal, whether Fani Willis should be removed as the prosecutor because she has a conflict of interest. This is the argument, because she dated somebody in her office. That's Donald Trump's argument. I don't think it has much merit. I don't think even the Georgia Supreme Court would ultimately remove Fani Willis, but it's out there as an appeal issue. The second part of the appeal is Fani Willis and her appeal on the fact that Judge McAfee dismissed a handful of the criminal counts against people like Donald Trump. The heart of the case remains, the criminal racketeering case, which ties together all of the 14 or 15 remaining co-defendants and their bad acts, still exists. But these other counts, which I think are also important, are up on appeal as to whether they were properly dismissed or not. So that case is not going to be resolved in 2025. If Donald Trump loses, it goes forward once these appeals are resolved sometime in late 2025. If Donald Trump wins, I think it's going to be put on ice for quite some time, because I think Georgia has sort of a public policy about prosecuting sitting presidents. But it could clearly revive the prosecution and pull the pin and go back to it after Donald Trump leaves office. Now let's move to the two federal cases. Mar-a-Lago, which I think is actually the easiest case for the prosecution, the special counsel to ultimately win, for the espionage and obstruction of justice related to the dozens and dozens of top secret classified documents Donald Trump treated like his own, refused to turn over, and then try to hide his trails using various people within Mar-a-Lago that were close to him, including his co-defendants. That case got dismissed by Aileen Cannon, somebody that now looked like was trying out for the job of Attorney General or Supreme Court Justice in a possible Trump administration. But it's up at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals sitting in Atlanta, back to Atlanta, but federally. I think they reverse, it's almost fully briefed, I think they reverse Judge Cannon. They send it back, maybe not to Cannon. They replace Cannon, reassign it to some other judge, because public confidence has been rocked by the disclosure that she is on the short list of Donald Trump's attorney general positions, and a new, better judge in the Southern District of Florida. I know many of them, almost all of them would be better. All of them would be better than Aileen Cannon. Gets assigned to that judge, who progresses it in 2025 if Donald Trump loses. If Donald Trump wins, as soon as he gets into office in January, a minute after 12:01, he's going to order somebody somewhere to fire the special counsel. It has to be the attorney general. And so he's going to make that order. And if that person doesn't do it, he's going to replace him as soon as he can with an acting attorney general until they get confirmed, and fire Jack Smith. And that'll be it. And he's even threatened to deport Jack Smith because he says he's mentally deranged. I don't think he understands how deportation processes work, but you can't deport someone who's mentally deranged, even if that were the case. But that case, I think that case gets dismissed, obviously, by instruction of Donald Trump. He'll self-pardon. He'll pardon his way around it as well, and that will be dead on arrival. Similarly, the D.C. election interference case, which we're at the superseding indictment, the replacement indictment that came out in August, or in late August, beginning of September. The question there is, has Jack Smith satisfied the Supreme Court and its immunity ruling? By the way, he created his superseding indictment after that ruling. And right now we're playing around in the sandbox in front of Judge Chutkan in the DC election interference case, but it's all roads are going to lead right back to the Supreme Court. So ultimately, this superseding indictment has to, once Judge Chutkan is done with her work, trying to figure out how the immunity decision maps onto the indictment, goes back to the Supreme Court probably sometime in the next 60 days. If Donald Trump, again, it's the same fork in the road. If he loses, that case is going to go back to the United States Supreme Court, and he'll be prosecuted hopefully sometime in late 2025. If he wins, he will dismiss the prosecution, the special prosecutor, use a acting attorney general to do it, fire everybody, pardon himself and others around him, and that will be the end of that. So I wanted to just, we talk a lot about the campaign, and it is obviously just hours away from people getting to do what they've been dying to do, in some cases literally, to vote for the person, and not just the person of their choice, but the country of their choice and what they envision. How do you envision and how do you live your gospel of your patriotism? How do you live the gospel of your patriotism? What kind of country do you want to wake up in on Wednesday morning? And that's really what it is. You can call it existential. You can call it a threat to the rule of law, a threat to our constitutional republic, a civil war moment. You can call it what you will. But it really is about your imagination, about how you imagine the world and what your patriotic America, both for its citizens and its immigrants, looks like. And what it looks like around the world as the holder of the freedom torch. That is what you're deciding. And so I wanted to, while we're talking about these issues, culminating in an election, a switch being pulled and votes being cast, I wanted to talk about that there's 4 cases are still out there, that there's a sentencing on the 26th of November, that it's important to our democracy, that our one of the pillars that undergird it or holding up the democracy, which is our criminal justice system and our justice system, survive past Tuesday, do its job. That's all I want people to do. Just do your job, right? Just do the job constitutionally that you've been assigned, no more, no less, and don't try to throw over democracy. So when we get over Tuesday, I'll come back and talk about, and I'll remind you what I said about the 4 cases. If he loses, he gets sentenced in New York, I think, to between 1 and 2 years for the 34-count felony conviction. The Georgia case goes forward. The Mar-a-Lago case gets reinstated, and the D.C. election interference case makes its way back to the Supreme Court, who ultimately finds the superseding indictment survived their analysis. I think that at least 3 of those 4 things will come true if Donald Trump loses. This is like writing your own ending of a story, literally. If Donald Trump wins, the sentence in New York will be made. He'll be in the courtroom for it, but I think it will be suspended and he'll have to serve it after he serves his last term, his only term remaining in the presidency. Georgia, similar, although they may even go as far as to dismiss the prosecution. Remember, New York, there's already a conviction. Mar-a-Lago, gone. D.C. election interference case, the same, by an acting attorney general appointed by Donald Trump, who 1 minute after noon, after 12 on the 20th of January, will fire Jack Smith, and Donald Trump will then immediately pardon everybody in and around January 6th, including himself. And that will be the end of that. That just shows you what's on the ballot. There's many, many things on the ballot that are embodied by these proxies of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Women's rights, voting rights, a dignified immigration policy, the United States Supreme Court, Donald Trump voiding his fascist tendencies, his fascism that he wants to install, and whether we're going to allow the justice system to do its job concerning Donald Trump's past transgressions and crimes. You're already here on the Legal AF YouTube channel. We're building this with our bare hands and your help. For the other side of Tuesday, you can help by hitting the subscribe button, have everybody in your life do the same thing. And follow me here on the Legal AF Midas Touch collaborative channel, and also on the Midas Touch Network, where our Legal AF podcast is. And then Legal AF, the YouTube, is here with everything that's related to Legal AF at the intersection of law and politics. So until my next hot take, until my next contribution, I am Michael Popok, and I am reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.